So now we're going to move on to the muscles of the trunk and the arm. So the first one we're going to do is your pec. So your pectoralis major. So this is going to be a fairly large muscle. It's going to originate on the sternum and the clavicle, and then it's going to insert over here on the deltoid tuberosity on the humerus. So that raised bump, it's really on the outside edge of the humerus, the deltoid tuberosity. So I'm going to need a muscle that's going to span across there, especially if you look at the PDF. So I'm going to start with a fairly large chunk. I'm just going to kind of warm it up in my hand. And I am going to use a new tool this time around. Use the rolling pin. I personally hate the wire. It hurts my hand. So I'm going to take it off of the wire, and I'm going to use it like this to flatten out that muscle. You might find sometimes that it sticks. It's totally okay. Just remove it so that you get a nice flat piece of muscle. All right, I think that's going to be big enough. So when I take this and I kind of bring it over, I need it to be enough so that it can span that whole area. That looks pretty darn good. So I'm going to go ahead now and take this muscle, and I'm going to make sure that it fits here on the sternum, and then it's going to taper to a point and insert on that deltoid tuberosity on the humerus. So I'm going to do a little shaping. So I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to shape it with my fingers to get it to fit, and then I'm going to be using my probe mixed with my wire tool to kind of cut it, just to trim it up. What you can find that will help you is I'll trace it on my mannequin, and then I'll take it off and put it on my mat and then cut it. So I put it on here, match it up, let's make a trace, and I move it back over and I cut it. So here's my shape here. So I'm tapering it there because it's going to be my tendon where the muscle would attach to the bone. All right, so that looks pretty darn good. For my pectoralis major, I'm going to stick that first on the sternum, and stick that on the sternum, and then I'm going to move that up onto the edge of my clavicle. So I've got on my sternum, so origin on the sternum, origin on the clavicle, and then this is going to taper. I might pack out a little bit here. Come on, buddy. Attach on my deltoid. So take a little finessing. That's going to happen. Attach on my deltoid tuberosity on my humerus, which was on the lateral edge of my humerus. So here's my pectoralis major, and now I'm just going to draw in my direction of my fibers. So if my arm's like this, outstretched, this muscle, the pec, one of the things it's going to do is going to adduct, which means I'm adding my arm to my body. I'm going to adduct, bring my arm back to the medial portion of my body. So it's going to adduct the arm and the shoulder. So I'm going to draw in I'll use my probe. I'm going to draw my tendon, and then I'm going to draw in my muscle fibers. All right, there we go. Pectoralis major, and then I did draw in my little tendon here at the end. So there's our first one. All right, so we left off with our pectoralis major, because I just had to review what the heck we're doing for the next one. So now we're going to tackle biceps brachii. So this one is really supposed to originate up here on the scapula, but yours is in the coracoid. We don't really have one. We only have an acromion. So we're going to just get it so it fits above the head of the humerus, kind of like above where the glenoid process is, or glenoid cavity. So as long as it's stuck in there, touching the scapula, and then it's going to come down and it's going to insert just below the coronoid fossa. So this indented hole, which would have been your coronoid fossa, because oleocranial fossa is on the back, right below there, just distally from that little pocket is where they're going to insert. Now, biceps brachii is two muscles. There's a long head and a short head, so you're going to need a lot of clay. You're going to need to snake that out. It's much longer of a muscle than you realize, and this is going to be a belly muscle. So it's going to have to run all the way up from that scapula all the way down to just distal part of that coronoid process. So from really it'd be coracoid to coronoid, but we don't have that coracoid on there. All right. And it's definitely not going to be long enough. You can technically make your biceps as big as you want to. I'm going to make mine pretty reflective to what I think would be realistic for my skeleton here. So here's my belly muscle. I got my tendon. I've got my tendon, and this is going to be the long head of biceps brachii. I think I've made it long enough. I have. So it's going to, origin is going to be up in here underneath the acromion process. So up in there on the scapula. And it's going to extend all the way to kind of push it onto the humerus so that it doesn't fall off. Just below then the oleocranian or the coronoid process. So there's my long head. My short head is going to then come right in front and go right alongside and kind of meet right there. Grab myself some more clay. Same thing, make a snake. So this one does not have to be as long. Yeah, let me see here. Nope. So that should be good enough. I think taper my edge once I get my tapering in there. For my tendon, taper my other side for my tendon. That should be just about right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to attach it up onto the medial part of my scapula. This one would be on the coracoid. That's not there. We're just pretending. This one on the medial portion. It's actually on a tubercle of the scapula that we don't have present on there. Then I'm going to run. You really kind of have to push it on, kind of make it stick next to your other long head of your bicep or it will fall off. So bicep then, here we go. Bi meaning two because it has two points of origin and then one point here of insertion at the bottom, but it is a long head and a short head muscle together. And this then flexes the arm. So I'm doing bicep curl. It also, my arm is in non-anatomical position. I can supinate, which means I put my palm upward. Humerus. The biceps brachii, I can do that too. So not only flexing, but if I'm here, I can supinate and turn my hand palm up. So it was here to here. So that's biceps brachii. Now I'm going to check what our next two muscles will be on the next video. So I'm just going to end this one.